All right. So
Okay.
tell us about the year the haystack burned down and how big was it? All those kinds of things.
We were in our, just finished the second crop hay, as I recall.
Okay.
It might have been the third crop. And
Okay.
we had, in those days, we had where the holding pen is for the cows. All the haystacks were just to the south, and they went on a row down along the
Uh-huh.
acres there. And so they were really close together, but there was a little space in between them.
Okay.
But we baled one of the crops, or the crop that just went in the stack was baled way too green. And so it just sat smoldering in the stack,
All right.
and it combusted on itself and took off, and it just took all three stacks,
It did all of them.
all of them.
So was that the entire hay crop for 1 year?
That was yeah, that was the equivalent. I'm sure it was the third crop, and,
Okay.
or there might have been a third crop left. Once in a while we get some on fourth crop,
Right.
but it was, I remember the feeling I had as I went out there, and it was after the fire engines had gone, and it was brought under control as much as possible. But with hay, it just doesn't burn all at once.
Yeah.
It burned for a couple of days.
Uh-huh.
But I remember going out there, it was dark, and I got this feeling of what a terrible thing. It almost felt like evil is lurking here.
Wow.
And it was just, I felt so bad. And so it wasn't more than a week later that it had burned down enough that we could push away all the ashes.
Uh-huh.
No sooner was that done than the first wagon load of hay came through the gate.
Wow.
And it came from the Hasslers, from the Froers, from the Hansens, from every neighbor we had, far and near. They all brought a wagon load.
Is that right?
And so when they had finished, we had enough hay for the season.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Wow.
And I'll never
So
forget
you
that.
remember if was Dale home when that happened, or were you the oldest at the time?
I can't remember. I think he might have been there then,
Okay.
but it was such a contrast. What I felt that one night while it was still smoldering,
Yes.
compared to each wagon load coming through.
Wow.
It
Oh,
was just
isn't that wonderful? That
just
shows again the family attitude, didn't it,
uh-huh.
of our neighbors and friends.
I remember too another incident that was a really important lesson for me. And Jim Grigg was our neighbor to the south. His son was just 1 year older than me, who
Okay.
passed away from,
Okay.
I can't remember what it was that he had, but he passed away, and they were going on a trip.
Billy was his name.
It was what?
Billy.
Oh, I think it was.
Mhm.
Yeah.
He passed
And,
away while I was home.
oh,
Hmm.
and so Jim asked me if I would come and milk the cows for them. Well,
Okay.
so I went and went to set through two milkings, one in the morning, one at night, and he showed me all the ins and outs and described the character of each cow. You
Oh,
had to know each of them in those days because
yeah,
it was a stanchion where you walked between them,
right.
put the thing over their back and under their belly. And so you had to know which ones were temperamental.
Right, right.
So, so he showed me how to do it. And I remember Dad taking me aside and saying, now you want to do the best job you can
Uh-huh.
because this is your first job that you've done away from home.
Wow.
And your brothers before you had a reputation. You want to keep that reputation going.
Mhm.
So I thought about that. And I went through the milkings, and it was a job that I guess in those days, the whole thing would be worth $20, you know.
Uh-huh.
And so they got home, and Jim Grigg came over. And first he talked to Dad and told him what a bang up job I had done. And then he came over and gave me $50.
He gave you $50.
I just about fell through the ground. You know?
Oh, yes.
And I couldn't believe it. He says, you deserved every penny.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Isn't that a neat thing?
Yeah.
That's a neat experience. There's a lot of growth, wasn't there, when we take responsibility?
Yeah. And especially when you're working with other people's livestock and part
Yeah.
of their livelihood. And it was really important.
Wow.
We had the Hansens living next to us up on the corner of the 120-acre farm.
Uh-huh.
Sister Mary Hansen, I'll never forget her. She was the funnest lady that I ever got to acquainted with.
Okay.
She told me the story of one of her neighbors that came by and asked her, do you like mushrooms? And she said, oh, I love mushrooms. And she says, look, we just picked a lovely bunch of them. I want to give you some of them. And she thanked her for them, and she drove off. And the next day she came back and asked her, says, Mary, did you eat those mushrooms? And she says, yes, they were delicious. And she said, well, I think I'll eat some of those too then. They must be safe. We always had a hard time trusting that person.
Oh, that's quite a story, isn't it?
Yeah.
Now, that reminded me that you even worked with mushrooms, didn't you, in a plant there in Vail?
Yeah, that was after I was married.
After you were married.
We assisted in helping put together the mushroom plant powered by hot water.
Oh, okay. The hot water from the river, wasn't it? From what was it, a spring or something?
It was a well across the highway,
Okay.
and it was hot enough to do the pasteurization.
Okay.
And so it saved a lot of money in that respect.
Oh, yes.
But
So that was one of the projects that you did when you moved back to Vail, wasn't it?
yeah, but to get the whole thing together, to get the grower, the hot water connections done, and a New York banker, Oliver Grace, came, and by the time he sat down at the table with us, we didn't have anything left.
Oh, wow.
These New York bankers were too sharp for country
Uh,
boys.
Wow. Oh, wow. How about that? Well, we're to the end of another 10 minutes. So let me stop this one.